Good morning, everybody. This is Rick Marr. I want to welcome you to our webinar today on how to stand out on your interview. My name is Rick Marr, and I'm the CEO of Turning Point Human Capital Management, and I am happy that you can join us this morning. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. And it will be posted on our website in the next 24 to 48 hours. So you can get a copy of it here. And so our intention is over the next 25 minutes or so to go through this presentation and to answer any questions that you have at the end of the presentation. Please note that there's a chat feature on this Zoom. So please feel free at any time to place your questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them at the end of the webinar during our discussion and Q&A portion. I will also discuss at the end some proactive next steps you can take with our company that could benefit you or people that you know, family, employees, etc. So kind of inserting some commentary. As of this morning at 8:30, the new unemployment job numbers came out. And those numbers were 3.3 million Americans applied for unemployment insurance this past week. That is more than double what the expectation was. The expectation was 1.5 million people. And then the expectation of 1.5 million was actually double what the highest number ever was back in the 2008 financial crisis. So as you can see, getting a job, finding a job, being prepared for that job is going to become more important than ever, and it will affect, if not, unfortunately, many of us on this call, many folks on this call, but family, friends, and loved ones. So with that, our commitment is we will repeat this presentation with any updates as they come available early next week. So we'll get a date on that and get you some updates on that as well. So I appreciate you all being here, and so let's go through the presentation. So during this webinar, we're going to discuss ways that you can prepare for and impress a potential employer who may be responsible for deciding whether or not you'll be a great addition to their team. This is a strange time in our society and our community, and being prepared is extremely important. Again, just kind of commenting on what the stats that I just discussed. Jobs are going to become scarce, right? They're going to become coveted. So they're going to be given to those that are best prepared and best understand how they fit into those potential roles. So this kind of conversation, I think, is even more important than ever. You may be, or you may know, a college student suddenly home from school with a lot of time on their hands, right? Or they may be interested, or you may be interested in honing in on some of your existing skills so that it could propel you into a new career or new experience. No matter what your specific interests are, these skills can benefit you in many aspects of your life. So going back to those college students, there'll be those that are going to be entering the workforce, if not already, because their schools have closed down, but in the near future when they graduate, that's going to put additional pressures on hiring managers and employers and the amount of jobs that are available at this moment in time. So making sure we're all prepared is the best thing that we can do. So today we'll go through some tips and key points for acing your interview. We'll start with different ways you can make sure you're prepared before you even step foot into the company's building or start a phone interview call, right? So this is another byproduct. We may be doing lots of video conferencing interviews over the next few months, right? So what does that do? How do we deal with that? It's something that we're not used to. So do we have the ability to do it? Are we comfortable doing it? Did we practice doing it? Did we make sure the technology works? All those sorts of things. Next, we'll talk about common dreaded questions interviewers love to ask and ideal ways to be prepared to answer them. We're also seeing a rise in behavioral style interviews. and we will discuss those in a little more detail and how you can best understand your behavioral style, understand how to answer those types of questions, and how to recognize when you're being asked those behavioral style questions. So all of these things add up into making you the best interviewee that you can possibly be. Finally, we'll go through some great questions that you can ask the interviewer, right? So as an HR firm, we do a lot of interviewing and hiring for our clients. So we're in many instances asking these questions of their candidates. So we're going to share with you some of the ones that you should be prepared for, and that as a hiring manager or interviewer or HR person or owner of a business who may be hiring you or potentially hiring you, what are some great questions that you should ask or could ask? So we'll go through some of those. I put a quick quote on the bottom when we were putting together this presentation, and when I saw the numbers this morning, it just made all the more sense and kind of gave me chills when I read it again, right? So all of our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them, by Walt Disney, right? And I think that as we go through this, the jobs that we have today, the titles that we have today, the skills that we have today may need to adapt. And we may need to have the courage to go pursue, the changing world. And it's literally changing moment by moment. So I just thought that quote was a great way to kind of kick off the presentation. So let's go to the next slide. So, be prepared, right? So this sounds very simple, but it's really a most essential tip. Above all else is to be prepared. It sounds much easier said than done, but today's webinar will give you some tips on how exactly to prepare yourself for an interview, how to stand out from the crowd, and how to make a fantastic first impression. So a month or two ago, when we started thinking about this presentation, the crowd of people who were looking to get hired for a job was much smaller, right? So the competition was much less. Unfortunately, the competition just became exponentially more crowded, right? And that means, instead of competing against 10 people for a job, you might be now competing against 100 people or 1,000 people for a job. So being prepared, although sounds simple in words to say, it's very important that every aspect of your preparation is taken seriously and taken to the nth degree. So the first thing you want to do is research the company that you're interviewing for. You can start by looking at the company website, learning about their mission, their visions, and their values, and take time to consider how their values align with your own and why these values have sparked your interest in the first place. You want to make sure that this is a company that you understand their perspective and what they stand for, right? I think this is just a natural way when we're, meeting with someone new, is to understand where they are and then tailoring our presentation to fit that, and assuming that we want to fit into that world. If they have social media, which I think everyone does at this point, and probably because of the new world that we're in isolation and quarantine and all those kind of terrible things, people who may not have used social media as much in the past are using it. And those that were using it are using it more and more. So social media now there's a ton of information out there that you can find on various businesses, business leaders, hiring managers, etc. So this is a great way to learn more about the company. You will also benefit from rereading the job description for the position you applied for. You would be surprised by how many people attend interviews without doing much research on that, right? They take it for granted. And this leads interviewees to asking questions that have the potential to disqualify them as candidates. Believe it or not, we've been asked questions like, wait, what job was this again? And what's the title of this job? These are prime examples of a candidate that did not really want to get the job, right? And unfortunately, again, when we wrote this presentation a couple of months ago, this was based on the concept that you might be competing against 10 people for an open position. Clearly now, we might be competing against 100, 1,000, or 10,000. No one knows the depth of it at this time. So this preparation is absolutely essential. Doing the research can help set you apart from the other candidates. And think of the bad candidates. The idea is to show that you know more about the company than anyone else being interviewed. This demonstrates to the company or the hiring manager or the interviewer that you have a real interest in working there. And it shows that if you're willing to put the effort in preparing for your interview, you'll be, odds are you'll be willing to extend that effort into your daily tasks as an employee, right? So we really want to make sure that the things that we can control, we absolutely can control. So control your controllables is the saying that we use. Your research, your understanding of what's going on, and your ability to be prepared for that interview. When being asked questions during the interview, you should incorporate the company's values into your response in order to show that you're a great fit for the company, right? So many companies put their company values on their website. Many don't, right? Many put them on there and they don't live by them. But your job is to take the information that you have and use it to your best ability. So showing that you've done that research and you understand their values is a great first way to make a good impression. At this point in the interview, it's important not just to list what's already on your resume. That information has already resonated with the employer in some way. That's why you're there. Now you want to start to show your skill set, which may be very similar to other potential interviewees. How do you stand out above the rest? So personalizing your responses to the specific company you're interviewing for will help you highlight your accomplishments in a conversational way while showing how you can add value to that specific organization, right? So really, an interview is the telling of a story, right? The resume is the script of that story. So how you tell that story, how you give it color and life and real world examples could be one of the things that sets you apart. So preparing for answering those questions and telling that story above and beyond your resume is going to become critical to helping you stand out, and I'll keep saying it, against the other 100,000 or 10,000 other people. While answering more detailed questions, it's important to have self-awareness, right? Side commentary, self-awareness is one of the greatest gifts we all can have, right? What are we good at? What are we bad at? What do we need to work on? How are we seen by the world, right? That self-awareness is there's tons of tools out there we'll talk about in a little bit to help bring that self-awareness around and bring that self-awareness to that interview. You want to show your authentic self and give genuine responses. This is the only way you'll be able to have a successful working relationship if the hiring process goes well, right? If the hiring process goes well. You do not want to end up in a role you don't enjoy or are not a great fit for. Personal branding and self-awareness are the key. So no overselling of yourself, but being able to tell a great story around the work that you do, around the tasks that you've had and the training that you've had in the past. You should also print out, and some of these things may seem simple and rudimentary, but in the many interviews we've conducted for both our company and for our clients, you'd be surprised how many people don't do these things. So you should also print out a few additional copies of your resume to take with you. This can help make the hiring manager's life easier, especially if more than one interviewer will be present. It's also important to arrive early enough to compose yourself before the interview and to show that you're respectful of the hiring manager's time. While waiting to meet the hiring manager, it's important to be respectful of everyone you meet, really. From the custodian to the CEO. No one should be taken, granted for, right? So it's kind of going back to, all the things that we've learned in kindergarten are what we really need. But you'd be surprised how many people sit in the lobby and are dismissive of people, who work there who they don't believe are, are worthy of their conversation or their kind comments. So back to the resumes. So if you think about most interviews, typically the first set of interviews are conducted by someone on the hiring manager's team, right? And they're the ones that the relationship is initially built for. Then, typically in further interviews, people are being brought in who are meeting you for the first time, right? So make it easy for them to love you, right? Having that resume ready for them to go, rather than saying, oh, did you get a copy? And the person has to say, oh, I don't have a copy. Do you have one? Avoid that awkward moment. Have it ready to go, right? That's one of the, I would say, one of the easiest things to control. Remember, control your controllables. Next slide. Common questions. We title this the common dreaded questions. So you know that the curveball is coming, right? You know it. So be prepared for it. The worst thing that you could possibly do is know that the curveball is coming and not be prepared for it. So let's talk about some, once the interview starts, the first question you're most likely to be asked is, so tell us about yourself. This is the first chance to make a great impression, right? You know that this question is coming, right? Or some form of it. Tell us why you're here. Tell us what attracted you to this job, right? So you know that this curveball is coming. Since you know this is going to come, set the stage for the rest of the interview. You will want to have a prepared quote, unquote, again, in quotes, script for how you're going to answer this question. Even though we all know this question will be asked at some point, you'd be surprised how many people fumble over this question and give a poor answer. And that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the interview. Now remember, we all know the old saying, you have one chance to make a good first impression. You're now competing against not 10 people for this job, maybe not 100, maybe 1,000 or 10,000, who knows? So make sure that you don't fumble this fumble this one, or swing and miss on this curveball, because you know it's coming. Make it work for you. In this question, when they ask you this question, right, tell us about you or why you're here or that sort of thing, it's important that you answer with a brief description of your background and goals, but you want to keep it short and sweet. And it's important to remain professional in this question. It's not geared towards, how many pets you own or, what your hobbies are or, where you like to go on vacation. You have approximately 90 seconds on this question in order to keep the hiring manager's attention and keep it flowing naturally and conversationally. So if you think about this as a script, much like a Broadway actor who, when they act for the first time, when you see them, you think that's the real person, but they've rehearsed that script. So you don't want to sound scripted, but you want to have your points down. You want to have your things flowing so that you're ready to answer that question, and take that 90 seconds and make it the beginning of a great rest of the interview. So it's important that you think about this answer ahead of time, but you don't want it to sound, like I said, like you're reading a script. So be natural, be yourself, and you'll get the chance to facilitate more detailed conversation throughout the rest of the interview process, right? Because you've answered this clearly, concisely, and sharply. So, and now we'll, talk about the next dreaded question that always comes up on an interview, and it's usually the person's least favorite, and that's, tell us about your weaknesses, right? So here it is best to avoid the non-personalized answers, such as I'm a perfectionist, or I love my work too much, or one of those kind of canned answers that people look at and go, that doesn't really sound true, right? Remember, you want to show the employer that you are self-aware. Remember, self-awareness. And the best way to answer this is to mention an area for growth and discuss steps you've already taken to improve on this, along with things that you've learned by doing so. So, for example, if you struggle with public speaking, acknowledge this is a weakness, but mention Have you sought out lessons or help for this? And discuss any ways that you were able to successfully improve it. So we all have a weakness. And I think at this time, especially, again, in light of that number that came out this morning, the 3.3 million, this is the time to differentiate. I think people understand authenticity and that we're not all perfect, because if we were, then, you know, we wouldn't be in this mess, right? So take that time to give a real answer on something that you are not really strong at, but most importantly, that you can say, hey, I took a course these last 3 weeks while I was out on how to be better at Excel, or how to be a better speaker, or any of those types of things. That's self-improvement. That will really help create a great answer to one of these, the worst questions that there is, which is, what are your weaknesses? So these two questions here are the curveballs that you know are coming. So you absolutely want to have great answers for them and great ways to respond to them, so that in these 90 seconds that you have to make that first impression, you're off and running and differentiated from the rest of the crowd. So we talked a little bit about behavioral style interview questions, and you know, many companies have adopted this system in the past, and we're seeing more and more companies interview using behavioral style questions. So interviewers that use these series of questions, they may feel like they're required to answer a question perfectly in order to get the job. This is not necessarily the case, especially with the rise of these behavioral style interviewing questions. Many companies are starting to adopt this system in which they ask you to recall how you reacted in specific experiences. Behavioral interviewing is a way to ask questions that lead to your actions or your behaviors in specific situations, right? So, so think of, here are some common questions or prompts in this style. And when you start to recognize or hear these types of questions, you know that you're in a behavioral style interview. So one that, you know, here's some that we use for our company when we're interviewing for our team members. Tell me about a time you worked with a difficult person, or tell me about a time when you juggled multiple responsibilities at once, right? And my favorite, tell me a time when you were faced with a difficult customer and how you handled the situation, right? So those questions are very open-ended questions, but they're very specific about you, right? And they start to drive at how, you know, how you handle those situations, because when they ask them, they're thinking about their customers or their business and how you fit in. So the same way you prepared your introduction pitch, you should make a list of some of your previous professional experiences that highlight your accomplishments. You want to keep these responses positive and be aware of your body language and speech while you answer. You know, again, you'll want to do research here for a sample behavioral style questions and practice answering them, right? Practice answering them. So if you can tell a story and tell a time of how you dealt with these things, or answer these behavioral questions, you know, in a great manner, that can really separate you from those other 10, 100, 1,000, or 10,000 people that are interviewing for the same position. Right. So even though interviews can be nerve-wracking, we all know this, we've all been on them, they're nerve-wracking, you should try to keep a steady tone, right? Try to remind yourself that, excuse me, that you're just having a conversation. You want to know as much about this company as you can, right? Because it's not only you, as I mentioned several times already, excuse me, it's not only you that's being interviewed, right? You should be interviewing them, right? Is this a right fit for you? Will you and can you succeed in this role? I want to tell you a little bit how we operate internally on interviews and ensuring that the right people, when we hire people at Turning Point Human Capital Management, we're putting the right people in the right seats. So at Turning Point Human Capital Management, we're fans of we use DISC, that's D-I-S-C, DISC assessment, which is described by its publishers as, you know, a non-judgmental tool used for discussion of people's behavioral differences. This does not mean that you're expected to alter your personality to match whatever you think the company is looking for. That's important to note. This tool is used to ensure that you're going to be a good match for the position you're interviewing for. So your responses to behavioral questions can't be wrong if that is how you chose to handle the stressors. You know, those stressors, a difficult employer, a difficult customer, those sorts of things. The behavioral interview style is merely used to determine if your behavioral style will match the job description. So it may seem like there is no way to prepare for this type of interview style, but that's not the case. If you're interested, you can take a free personality test online. You can even take a free DISC assessment online to find out what your personality type you have. So you can then research if this is the personality type commonly found in the position that you are interviewing for. So don't be discouraged if it looks like you're not a match for the job. You should use this tool to build your confidence, not hurt it, right? So we really encourage, you can just Google, you know, DISC assessment online. There's a free version. You can understand it. And I'll add something else to this. When you start to understand DISC, you can understand potentially the behavioral style of the person interviewing you, right? So that person may be, you know, the typical give me the 3 bullet points and I'll make a decision, right? Or they could be the person that says, give me all the detail and let's chat about it more, right? And when you understand the behavioral styles of the person interviewing you, you know, you may walk out of an interview that only lasts 3 minutes and you say, boy, that really stunk, I bombed on it. But if that's the kind of, if the interviewer is the type of personality that's the behavioral style that only wants the 3 bullet points, you might have just nailed it, right? So understanding your behavioral style and understanding the behavioral style of the person you're meeting and tying that to the position you're interviewing for could be a tremendous leg up when you're dealing or competing against the other 10, 100,000, or 10,000 people applying for the job. Self-awareness, I'll leave you with this on this slide. Self-awareness is perhaps one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves. Okay, questions for the interviewer, right? So these are things that you should be prepared for. So like I stated earlier, during your interview, you should also realize you're actually interviewing the employer as well. You are also deciding whether or not you want to work there. You should be prepared to ask detailed questions in order to learn more about the position and the company. This is great to do organically as the conversation flows, right? So you may want to, at a certain point, feel that you want to take a little control of the conversation by asking a question, right? And that question could be about the company or about the interviewer, right? So it's important to have some of these questions for the interview at the end of the interview, but also you can use them as tactics within the interview. So my personal favorite question to ask is, what does the hiring manager like about working for the organization? So the person that's interviewing you, this is a great question for them. This gives you insight into possible pros and cons about working at this company. This can also tell you if the values of the supervisor aligns with your own, right? And also the interviewer might value something that is equally important to you, solidifying for you that this would be a great place for you to work, right? Or it might be the opposite. You might find that, you know, when you did research on the company's values, they were about these great things, and this hiring manager contradicted that or supported it, right? So this could give you, when you do your research and intelligence gathering on this company, these kinds of questions of the interviewer could confirm many of the things that you found out or disprove them, but it's important to know. So here are a few of the other great questions. What do you look for in employees to represent your company's values, right? What are the day-to-day responsibilities of the role? If they did not already tell you this, of course. Make sure to be attentive and not ask a question that is already told to you in an answer earlier, right? So you want to be have your notes So if you have your notes when you walk in of the 10 questions you wanted to ask, and in the first 5 minutes, 3 of them were answered, make sure you don't ask them again later on in the conversation. Another great question to ask an interviewer: how do you measure success in this position? That's a tremendous question to ask of an interviewer. What do you love most about your job and the company? What are the ideal candidate traits for this position? These are all great open-ended questions that give the interviewer the opportunity to tell you exactly what they're thinking, and it gives you the opportunity to confirm some of your research, the things that you may have heard, the things that you've learned online, and what was said in the job description and the job ad. So another great question is, let me just add this, especially if you feel that the interviewer might be a bit hesitant about you as a candidate, is, was there anything about my background or resume that makes you question whether I'm a good fit for this role, right? So if the person, the person might take the opportunity to give you some sort of stop sign, if you will. Well, you didn't work in this position long enough, right? Or it doesn't seem like you have all of the necessary requirements that we have of this job. It gives you an opportunity, this question, to ask what exactly they're thinking. They can give you their answer, and then you have the opportunity while you're sitting in front of them to go back over those points. Maybe you didn't dive deep enough into something or a question that they asked. This gives you the opportunity on that interview to check to see that you've done everything you need to do to give that interviewer the tools to hire you. And then at least if you walk out of there and you know that the interviewer says, boy, you just don't fit this job, then right? But they also may say, that's a great question. That's the kind of question I want to hear, and that could separate you from those other 10, 100, or 1,000 people, or 10,000 people. After the interview, right? So after the interview wraps up, you should follow up with a thank you note saying you appreciate the interviewer's time and consideration. Email is definitely the most common method for doing this, but another more personal option is a handwritten note. This may further demonstrate your genuine interest in the company and in becoming an employee. You can also send over a short candidate summary, reminding the interviewer why you'd be a good fit for the role. This is also a good time to reiterate your responses to highlight anything that you might have felt was left out, right? So being proactive in this sense, saying these things, send a note, send a thank you note, are all, people will go, I get that. I understand that, but you'd be surprised. You'd be shocked how many people don't send a thank you note or some sort of follow-up acknowledgement, even as simple as an email. But this is also a time for you to, we've all been in conversations when we've walked out of a room and said, boy, I wish I said that, right? Well, at this point in time, with there's 3.3 million people now out of work, we don't have the luxury of missing any opportunity to highlight why we may be better than anyone else for that job. So the candidate summary might be a great opportunity to follow up on that. So, any responses that you would like to reiterate or highlight anything that you might have left out. Being proactive is not overly annoying, right? You don't want to send a letter every day, but you want to be proactive. Is a great way to show your genuine interest in the company and the position. Even if you're not offered the position, a polite response back and interest in being contacted for other open positions is a great way to shine here, right? So I will tell you, when we've hired for our company, for Turning Point, there were times when people came in for a specific job position, but they just weren't right for that specific job position. But we found out that they were right for something else we wanted to do. So that opportunity to follow up, to send, it might lead to other things. Don't leave any stone unturned. As rudimentary or basic as it may sound, you'd be surprised. Again, I say it again, I said it before, you'd be shocked how many people don't do these simple things. And it could be the difference between finding a position and staying out of a position. So our other programs. So again, this is something that since the what happened in the past week, and really the 3.3 million people, we want to bring to you our attention to some other services we offer, including our free ongoing webinars. So where you signed up for this webinar, we have webinars basically running just about every week. We're going to, because of the popularity of this one so far today and what's going on in the world, we will run this seminar again in the next week or so. So if you have any friends, family members that may find themselves in a position of needing to get interviews, please direct them back to us. We also have on our website a resume database that you are able to enter or upload your resume and fill out your desired industry. So many of our clients are utilizing our database when recruiting, right? So don't miss an opportunity to get your name out there if you're in a position that you don't have, that you're looking for work. It will allow you to be contacted by us when a job opportunity opens up in your field for you to be contacted to apply. You can sign up by going to our website, which is turningpointhcm.com. There's careers on the toolbar. So scrolling down to the open positions, you'll see that on the right-hand side of your screen. And you'll see that we post any open positions that we know about that people are hiring for, but also we keep this resume database so should you not be in one of those positions that are open at this point in time. And this way, when our clients ask, or when the faucet gets turned back on, hopefully in the near future for hiring, you'll be ready to go. So I want to thank you. So we also have, for those that are just graduating college, we offer, and this is really for anybody, we offer over 50 online self-development courses, professional development, career development kinds of courses. If you'd like to get a copy of those courses, please just send us an email or contact us through our website. So these trainings this is a great time to do some additional training or initial training if you're someone coming out of college to prepare for the workforce, to prepare to fight that battle of one position for 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, or maybe even 10,000 people. So now I will open, here's our contact information if you'd like to get anything. As I mentioned, this has been recorded. It will be posted on our website in the next 24 to 48 hours. I'd like to open it up to any questions that you may have, and we'll stay a moment or two. Oh, okay, we have a great question here. We have a question from Alex. Okay. Let me just read it. Okay, Alex, thank you for being here. All right, so Alex asks, how do I know whether or not I should dress business, casual, or professional? This is a great question, Alex, and this is going to vary by industry. So if you're looking for an administrative position at a law firm, for example, you'll want to dress business professional. However, if the position is in a social media marketing company or some sort of startup business, business casual may be best, right? So you can look online, at the people who are there already and look for, outfit inspirations on sites like Pinterest and Twitter and all those things where those employees may be working, and pull up their social media accounts. You'll start to see the look, the feel, and what they have going on. This will allow you to get a better idea of how to dress, and when in doubt, always lean towards the side of professionalism. I don't think anyone would throw someone out if they were a little overdressed, if you will. All right, we have another question here from Nicole. All right, hi, Nicole. Thank you. This is a really cool question too. So Nicole asks, "What do I do when I'm getting interviews but not calls back?" Nicole, some employers do send rejection emails. While they're never fun, they're a great opportunity for growth. But even the employers that do it now, you can email them and reiterate that you're thankful for their time and ask for interview feedback so you can improve in the future, right? So you might learn that you should focus more on building certain industry-specific skills or programs. It's important here, Nicole, to really think about being polite, even if you're upset, which you might be, right? Or you probably would be, or it's understandable that you are, right? Sometimes the person that they did end up hiring won't work out, right? So if that's the case, they might follow back up with you. Or, as I mentioned earlier, they may find another position that could fit you and that you could be fit in the organization. So it's important to keep those things out open. So, so I have another question from Deirdre here. As a mature professional, how do I combat the valid issue of age discrimination? Well, Deirdre, I would argue that yes, maybe there is age discrimination out there, but not that it's a valid thing that companies should do. So I just want to push back on that question a little bit. I think this is the time. So just think how we're all telecommuting at this point in time. There's potentially, and my suspicion is there's going to be a shift in the way that we all work, right? And it's going to be a shift to more technology. It's going to be a shift to more remoteness, because if we're all quarantined or whatever the term is, we're all working remotely for the next 6-8 weeks, whatever it might be. What we're all proving is that our jobs can be done remotely. And that could be a benefit, right? So regardless of age, I would want to make sure that my technology skills are up to date. Am I comfortable doing a LinkedIn or Zoom conversation like we're doing now? Am I comfortable doing a video chat? Do I understand how to use those things? This is a time to start to, and again, going back to some of our professional trainings that we offer over 50, this is the time to think about what the new world will look like and how to take advantage of it. So to differentiate yourself, there may be, hey, I wasn't a technologically savvy person before this, but being that I had some time to myself these past few weeks, I went and I took 2 courses on how to use technology. I went and took 2 courses on, the newest things that are out and about. So even though I may be a more seasoned employee, I'm learning about how to operate in some new ways and getting better and preparing. So Deirdre, that's a great question. I think this is the time to look at ways to train yourself. So that's it. So the next question, the follow-up question is, that Deirdre keeps getting is, how much longer do I plan on working? Well, I'm not sure that that's a valid question, and I'm not sure that the person that's doing the hiring, if they're really a true professional, should be asking that question. That's borderline at best to me. But Deirdre, if you'd like to have a conversation separately about where you are and what you're doing, please email me at info@turningpointhcm.com, and you and I can set up a time to chat. Okay, great. Thanks, Deirdre. All right, so if there are no other questions, I'll just slowly sign off. Again, this is going to be recorded. This is going to be posted on our website. We are going to be doing a host of webinars, and then we are going to continue to invite you to get better as we all have a little bit more time, unfortunately. So thank you very much for attending. Have a great day. Everyone stay safe, and best wishes to all of you.